You're listening to Transformation at Work, your one-stop guide to Salesforce success. And this is Salesforce Tech Talks, expert deep dives into the art of solutioning and implementation for Salesforce. Our veteran squad of developers, solution architects, and industry veterans are breaking open the black box and digging into the possibilities of solution design and architecture. The show is brought to you by Jarrett, a summit-level Salesforce consulting and implementation partner and solutions provider, and I am Jeff Stormer, your host as always. From the keynotes to the Q&As to the learning sessions to the after-hour business dinners, when we look back at Dreamforce 2022, there's one word on everyone's lips: Genie. Salesforce's latest innovation was the talk of the town with its ability to deliver real-time insights and, as mentioned on nearly every keynote during the event, customer magic. It's clear that Genie is going to be a major focus for the company going forward. But for many users and customers, despite all the lavish praise and holographic genies, one question was left on their minds.
What is customer magic?
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 Now, there's no doubt that for many businesses, especially in manufacturing, Genie's real-time data processing could have a colossal impact. But to truly take advantage, you need to understand exactly what the solution brings to the table and how to integrate it into your existing workflows. Get a handle on that, and you are well on your way to unlocking the full potential of customer magic. In this episode, we're taking a deep dive into Salesforce Genie, what it is, what it offers to businesses in manufacturing, and how teams can best utilize the solution to deliver real-time, personalized experiences for their customers. We're joined in this episode by Anandi Narayanan, Jarrett's Senior Vice President of Business Transformation and Strategy in Manufacturing, Automotive, and Energy, and Ryan Bjorgaard, Jarrett's Manufacturing Product Lead. Anandi brings over 17 years of experience in manufacturing to the discussion, not just with technology, but with the people and processes that can lead to meaningful change. And Ryan brings years of Salesforce-specific technical product experience and a keen understanding of how technology can be utilized to transform business processes, increase efficiencies, and deliver results. We begin our conversation by breaking down the big question. What exactly is customer magic, and how can Genie make it a reality for businesses?
When I think customer magic, it's what everyone's been wanting since the day one of CRM. And I think it's been evolving, but it's always been centered at how do I give access and information to everybody who touches and talks to the customer, a single source of truth of that information, anyone who's commercially facing, right? So if we all think about it in our personal lives, we really don't enjoy a process whereby we call some 1-800 number or call some sort of service center and they have no clue about who we are to them, what kind of products we've done. Maybe we've talked to the sales team before. They don't seem to know us. They know maybe bits and pieces of us. And then, they pass us to, let's say, the next person who wants to talk to us, who says, can you repeat everything again? Can you tell me where you live? Can you tell me what you own? And you're wondering, are you all writing that on a Post-it note somewhere? Because it doesn't feel like it's centralized. Then I have no confidence that you actually even know me from a longevity perspective. So customer magic to me is, how do I bring all that context, knowledge, data, insight, information, everything to the hands of the people who are talking to the customer? But that definition, I think, has evolved. And I think Genie is sort of bringing a new face to what's possible.
100%. I think just to kind of go off of what you were saying there, Anandi, when I'm thinking about customer magic, it kind of comes down to two real things for me. It comes down to responsiveness. So if I have an inquiry from you, if I need to ask you something as a consumer, how soon can you get me what I need? And where Genie comes into it now is that next level of customer magic. So not only the question of how quickly can you get me what I need when it comes to responsiveness, but now how can you leverage engagement data to anticipate what I need? So when I come to you, you say, oh yeah, do you need this? Yes, I do need that, actually. Amazing. How did you know that? It makes you feel really good, right? Just as if you were working with a person in that kind of relationship. That's the kind of person you want to spend time with. Same thing, I think, in business. So responsiveness, 100%. And the other thing that I think of kind of goes along with that is personalization, right? Which I think is like historically something clients we've worked with in the MAE space have struggled with. Personalization. So how can I give you a differentiated personal experience in all of our touch points? We see a lot of the times we have transactional data like orders, right? So all of our, quote unquote, personalization is based on transactional data. How much have you ordered from me in the past? What kinds of things have you ordered from me? But one of the benefits I see with Genie coming out and the ability to integrate this kind of hyperscale data into our CRM experience, this is going to be this ability to give deeper kind of insights than what have you bought from me in the past.
So it's unlocking, I think, what you're saying about this to me is, I can think back even as far as like 10 or 15 years ago when Amazon and Google started doing a lot of this personalization. Everybody in business wanted a piece of that. And I think now the angst is higher. But a piece of that isn't trivial. Like it looks trivial when I look at a screen, right? And Amazon says, hey, you bought a yoga mat. You probably want blocks and blah, 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 because people who do that buy this. Or Google does that too, right? People who've bought this book or that book typically buy these other 3 types of books. And they may not necessarily be things that you would have packaged together, but it's like, wow, how did you figure me out? But if you go back to the science of how did you figure me out, there's a lot behind that, right? How did you segment me? Do you know my age? Do you know where I live? Do you know the things I like? We see that now accelerated, right? You see that with TikTok. You see that with Instagram. It's constantly listening and it's providing you something back. But the consumer market has grown. I think it's about translating that because I think everyone feels like there's an untapped market in the business sector.
100%. It's about translating that consumer experience to the B2B kind of space, the experience that everybody's used to with like your Amazons and your Googles and like that whole world. Translating that experience to the B2B space is going to be, I think, a huge differentiator for folks that we'll be working with like in the coming year, for sure.
Now that provides a pretty clear primer of what exactly customer magic is as a concept and what Genie does to make that concept a reality. But what does translating a personalized experience into the B2B space look like, specifically in manufacturing? Let's throw it back over to Anandi and Ryan for a few specific use cases for how manufacturers can use Genie to really transform the way that they work with their customers.
If we continue on the conversation about personalization, it's how is that information constantly changing if segmentation isn't fixed in time? And when I say that is an account, maybe I decide fits into a specific segment or industry, but maybe that customer has grown by acquisition and now it fits into more than one industry. Or maybe the types of services and offerings that are expanding or contracting, and therefore it's changing. So that segmentation, that thing that's happening to them is constantly changing. And then how do I take what's constantly changing so that something can learn from that changing and apply it to other kinds of companies to identify white space in product, to identify customers like you, because it's not easy to segment a customer. I mean, unless you want to have an army of people who are constantly figuring out where people bucket into, you really want something that's starting to learn. But learning means it needs a lot of data. It can't just learn off of a single data point. How do you bring that information, assess buying patterns, group kind of companies together and decide who are the ones that are like each other and what should they be buying? That to me is like personalization in the B2B space.
Yeah, 100%. And when you talk about the kinds of data, everybody knows kind of what they're driving towards. It's a matter of what data sources do we need to get that information? Where does that data live? And so this is where Genie I think is going to be a game changer for our industry, because we all know and love Salesforce, right? So Salesforce, I think most people know, comes to you with this kind of layered architecture. So we all love the transactional database in Salesforce, where we store things like our accounts, our contacts, our products, our pricing. All of that kind of stuff is Salesforce records. And then the real power comes in when you add on top of that transactional database, your logical layer, so your flows and your Apex, and you have the ability to orchestrate processes based on changes in your transactional database. And then you have your analytics or your reporting layer on top of that, where you're able to gain insights from those kind of things. But traditionally, working with that kind of what I'm calling a transactional database layer, that's set up to accommodate a specific kind of data, right? So like the kind of data I was talking about a little bit earlier that we're very used to seeing people work with in our space. It's usually order data, right? How much did you order? How often did you order from me? That kind of very, static, I'll call it. kind of data. In order to create the kind of experience that Anandi is talking about here, we need that data. So we're not saying get rid of the insights you're getting from your order data, but we're saying you need to augment it with a fundamentally different kind of data. That's this kind of engagement type data. What kind of places did you click into on my website? That, like, for example, right? Like that kind of data, if you compare it to like an order record in Salesforce, is going to be exponentially more in terms of volume. And it's also going to be exponentially more in terms of changes. So how often that data changes compared to how often you might think you're syncing orders into your sales platform now. So what Salesforce has done with Genie is they've given you, in addition to your standard transactional database that we all know and love, they've given us basically a hyperscale data lake that sits at the same platform layer as your transactional database. And that's going to allow you to store and work with this other kind of data that we've been talking about. So all of your kind of engagement, high volume, high change kind of data. It's going to let you bring it into Salesforce and work on it in near real time with the other tools that we all know and love. They're part of the Salesforce platform. So now you've got your logic layers, you've got your flows and your Apex. You've got your CRM analytics. All this stuff can now augment what you would be able to do with your transactional database and bring in the insights gained from your hyperscale kind of data. This is where the real kind of magic is going to happen from a technical point of view. And that's one of the things that, like, as an architect, is really exciting to me about this kind of innovation.
The other one I'm going to call out that's also similar, exactly how Ryan's talking about, the stuff that keeps changing really, really fast and that a lot of manufacturers care about, is IoT data or telematics information. So many manufacturers are putting these devices on their equipment so that I can preventatively or monitor your product in the field and come and tell you, hey, it needs a timing belt change, or the engine's going to fail, or whatever it might be. But that kind of data also is extremely volatile, changes all the time. You'll have all sorts of fault codes. Think of a massive system. So much data will be collected about it. How do you use that in order to then drive the insights on the engagement layer and talk to my customer and proactively reach out to them or take care of them, or even give it to a field service technician so that they know how to deal with the situation on hand and problem solve it?
When I first heard the announcement at Dreamforce about Genie and started to dig into it a bit, telematics was the first thing that came to my mind as well. Yeah. And one of the things that I thought was really exciting about the potential here is exactly gathering this kind of IoT type data, but then using platform tools based on the data being brought into Genie to do things like, based on what we know what they're using this machine for, how can we kind of segment that into, so say it's a company that works with, I'm just going to pick a device like excavators or something like that. So based on the data we're getting back from the telematics device and bringing into Genie, can we tell what they are using this machine to do? Where are they doing it? What kind of work are they doing with that? And can we bring that data up to the account level to figure out, based on the type of work we think you're doing, what else might you need? Can we suggest to you accessories that other people doing that same kind of work use? Can we give you a kind of deal based on, what we know about the seasonality of that type of work? All this kind of potential kind of explodes. It's really exciting because it's data we haven't been able to leverage in CRM before.
Yeah.
We're just jamming on the kind of the possibilities here now, but I'm sure people listening, knowing their own kind of business use cases, can start. That's one of the goals, right? Get the kind of creative juices flowing for the folks that are listening and kind of imagine what's possible that wasn't possible before.
The other one that just struck me now, and it takes me back to like my old days when I used to do quality engineering, is if I actually have this data about every asset that's in a field and every lot code and date code, or however way we want to serialize it and understand when it was produced, and you start to see in-field failures because your telematics are showing you can actually get early warning identification of field recall problems. Mm-hmm. Which typically it's really hard to do because you actually need to get, like, imagine in the old world, I have to get that feedback from a customer. Then I have to aggregate many feedbacks to identify that I think I have a systematic problem. Then I have to go in and look at the information about the product line that was produced at that time. And is there anything that we can discover that might have resulted in this quality thing that's living in the field? Mm-hmm. If now the machine is actually paying attention to it and we start to see repetitive failure codes across multiple machines, we can start to figure out is it isolatable? And I think that that helps brand value, right? If I know that the company I bought something from, I know companies make mistakes, it's all good. But like, if I know that you have my back because you're proactively watching for our best interest, I think that goes a long way for brand value, right? People will then buy more of that same thing because there's a belief on quality.
100%. You think about something like this kind of personalization and responsiveness from manufacturer to consumer of that product that we manufactured. It says a lot for the company you bought something from if they are concerned about the impact to your business, especially in manufacturing, right? You're making something physical and people who are buying that are using that physical thing in their businesses. It has real impact if that thing is down for an extended amount of time or even for just a short amount of time where it has to be out of the field. That's money that I'm losing.
Yeah.
If I know that the company I bought that from has that ability, right, to kind of proactively anticipate problems that might be going on and have strategies to kind of mitigate that. Maybe we've got kind of loaner units, or we've got people in the field, we can send out notifications to them, queue up, like you were saying, field service technicians to come out and take a look at things proactively before there's actual downtime in the field. Again, it's another one of those kind of game-changing possibilities.
Now, we've talked a lot about what Genie can offer to businesses in manufacturing, how it can transform processes, how it can impact customer experience, and that's all well and good. But it's still a pretty sizable change in how manufacturers organize their data and execute on their processes. Here's Anandi and Ryan on what manufacturers need to know before they start considering deploying Genie within their organizations.
I can speak to it from like a readiness of an organization. I think from a business perspective has to be that you actually kind of know where the data lives, what kind of data you want to be interested in. And I would say that, don't get stifled with analysis paralysis. So one of the flexibilities of Salesforce, which I think a lot of organizations might not necessarily know about, is that in most organizations, when they think of ERP projects or very big systems projects, they think everything's hard-coded and you have to know it exactly. The flexibility of Salesforce is you don't have to actually know everything exactly. It's pretty easy that way from like if I needed to add a new field or a new data point. It's not an impossible thing in Salesforce to do. That's not sort of hard coding work. But you have to have a starting point. You can't be so nebulous that I want customer information and I want to know how my customer's reacting, but I don't know where any of that information resides and I have no access to said information. Because if you have no access and you can't connect it, then there's nothing I can do because we're going to have to do that groundwork to figure your way out. So I would always encourage, like, start where you have some information, maybe where you've already started to try to poke at analytics, already started to try to do some data science kind of work, because you've probably uncovered some of the gnarly components of how your company is structured or organized in terms of data so that you're best informed to lead that discussion and actually like accelerate that work that you're probably doing in Excel or macros or in isolated systems. You can accelerate those things.
100%. I think you're exactly right. From a business user or from an executive point of view, folks want to be really clear about the type of insights that they're trying to get and then get aligned with the team on like, what are the outputs that we're expecting? What are we going to do with this data? And then once you've kind of nailed that down, you got to figure out exactly, like you said, where does all this data live before you start building connections or creating insight on the Genie platform. And then the other thing I want to throw out is something for Salesforce teams that may be listening. There's going to be obviously some platform readiness. And for Salesforce teams, especially for architects on the Salesforce side who may be working inside some of these companies that are thinking about implementing things like Genie, go back and get really familiar with things like platform events and event-driven architecture. One of the things I'll call out that you won't be able to do is use things like is changed functions or record triggered automation for obvious reasons, right? You'll blow up the Salesforce limits if you try and use this scale of data with those kind of functions. So you're going to need to publish and consume platform events in order to kick off some of these workflows or generate the kind of insights that your business partners are going to be asking for.
It's impossible to talk about manufacturing without bringing up a few of the challenges of the past few years. Supply chain disruptions, market shifts brought on by COVID, workforce shortages. These have had a real tangible impact in how manufacturers do business, and they've made customer experience and clear communication more important than ever. Here's what Anandi and Ryan had to say about how Genie can help manufacturers navigate these problem areas and deliver the best possible experience to their customers, even when dealing with deeply uncertain times.
I think one of the biggest ones, is bringing information and insight to what people call like capable to promise and available to promise. The thing with manufacturing is that if I don't have all the parts that I need, I can't make the thing. If I'm just down 2 screws, I can't make the thing, even though you think that the thing is made with like 1,000 other parts, and really just the 2 screws are stopping me. The 2 screws are stopping me from making that thing. So when we think of supply chain constraints, it's not even just in the finished good, it's in every little piece and part that implicates making that thing that you want to have. And so if you think a supply chain is complicated with all the pieces that have to come together and anybody falls short along the way, I'm constantly respinning my ability to calculate this concept of available to promise or capable to promise. I can't tell you when I can make something. Now I'm on the sales side of this engine, and my customer calls me and they're like, hey, can I have 15 machines? And today I think I can. If I look at the system today, it looks like, 15 machines can land on your footsteps on February 16th. And then tomorrow there's a supply chain thing and it's no longer 15 machines are available on February 16th. How do I know that as a salesperson? That's changed. And if I'm expecting supply chain teams to tell me, I mean, they're managing the fact that those things are no longer available and they're running around trying to get part shortage resolutions and things like that. They're not looking to necessarily understand every single customer impact, right? And my customer may not be a big customer to you, or my customer might be a big customer. I don't know how all of this is being rationalized, and I don't know how allocations are now necessarily being shifted. But I need to know, because I need to go talk to my customer and I need to give them an update. And if I don't, that relationship is broken and trust is lost in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good kind of use case because we're seeing it all the time. We're all hearing about it, of course. So being able to bring that data at that volume and at that kind of volatility and connect it to your CRM data, I think is going to be super helpful especially for commercial teams, because like you said, the sooner they know that there's an issue and what the impact of that issue is and who's affected by that issue, the sooner they can reach out and anticipate that issue. And then what I'm thinking is like really leveraging that kind of logical layer that is so core to Salesforce. So you have all of your process orchestration stuff, all of your Einstein analytics, next best action, this kind of thing. So not only can we now say, we know something has changed, we have an idea of what the impact of that change is, we know who's affected, but we can also start to surface up to the rep who owns those accounts, what should you do now?
Yeah.
And that is going to be so helpful, because not only are you reaching out to the customer with like, hey, there's an issue, right? There's a big difference between calling a customer and saying, hey, there's an issue with the stuff that you ordered, versus calling a customer and saying, hey, we think there's going to be an issue with the stuff you ordered, and here's what we can do about that.
Yeah. I think that's really important, because also when I think of that orchestration layer, you could even reach out to application engineers in your organization, right? And you could say, hey, I know we designed it for this outcome.
Yeah.
It looks like we're short on something. Is there another way we could consider designing this?
Yeah.
That maybe I can give my customer the same timelines, maybe with a slightly different configuration. Maybe they're willing to adjust that configuration. I want to give them options at the end of the day.
100%. And I think that's really where you're going to see the power of having connected data in your CRM come into play. It's connecting all the data points from not only from the supply chain side, from the actual manufacturing or the engineering side and the commercial side, and being able to kind of give options, because that's what we really want, right? Like you said, we understand like stuff happens in business, right? There's supply chain constraints. We can't really do anything about that. But the manufacturers who I think are going to win in this environment of instability are going to be the ones who can anticipate the issues and then give options as best as they can, right? Keep business going as usual.
The past few years have been nothing if not tumultuous for manufacturers. That's not saying anything controversial. Due to supply chain disruptions and workforce shortages, it is harder than ever to reliably compete on price and to maintain long-term relationships between businesses and sales teams. And that means the customer experience and communication. Knowing what customers need and being able to quickly connect them to those resources and having a plan ready for when those issues arise, that's more crucial than ever. And that is where Genie truly comes into play. By offering customers the same real-time predictive experience they're used to in other parts of life, manufacturers can now proactively build those relationships even when times are uncertain, and connect customers to what they need even before they ask for it. And that certainly feels like customer magic. This has been Transformation at Work. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to Anandi and Ryan for taking the time to sit down and deep dive on this topic. Transformation at Work is, as always, produced by Jaren in collaboration with Salesforce. I am Jeff Stormer, your host and producer. If you enjoyed the show, consider leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify, or head to jarrett.com to sign up for email updates when we release new episodes. Until next time, thank you again for listening, and we hope to see you again soon.